Welcome back. I realize this is my first video in a very long time. I think my last video was my exposure of the unethical business practices of Books A Million. About a week after that video, I got very, very sick. In fact, so sick that in early February, I got to spend a couple of weeks in the hospital. And while I was in the hospital, I had a comment come in on an older video, had a discussion with the commenter about my classics collection, and he suggested that when I was out of the hospital and in better shape, that I should do a book tour of my classics, particularly my Penguin classics. Well, I went back and tried to find that commenter so I could tag him in this video, and either I hallucinated that conversation or I just can't find it. But I did a fairly thorough search trying to, but in any event, I decided, well, I'll go ahead and do the tour anyway. There are 182 books on my Penguin bookshelf. Two of them, some of you folks might think shouldn't be there, but I'll point those out as I go. And because there's 182 books on, Penguins on this shelf, I'm going to try and go very quickly and only comment when I just happen to have, a significant thought about a book. But most of them, I'm just going to read the title and go on. And the way I categorize, I put books by unknown or anonymous authors or compilations before listing the other books by author by alphabetical order. In the event, let's start with the Bhagavad Gita, a collection of ancient Hindu scripture, early Greek philosophy, compilation of ancient Greek philosophers. This third book's kind of an interesting one, the Complete Dead Sea Scrolls. It has photo images and translations for all of the fragments, at least through the date of publication, that are characterized as the Dead Sea Scrolls found in Palestine. Very interesting. And of course, this is one of the newer editions. You can tell they changed this look of the Penguins just a few years ago. Took away the orange, gave it a more black and white look. In any event, the Epic of Gilgamesh, our oldest attempt as humanity at literature, at least as far as we know. The Great Alexander Romance, the Saga of Gittir the Strong, one of the Norse sagas, the Song of Roland, often referred to as the Matter of France. A book that you can see is labeled free, but I had to pay 50 cents for it at a library sale. Know the Past, Find the Future. It is a history of the New York Public Library. I don't even want to attempt the name, but a biography of St. Columba. Aeschylus, the work of the Oresteia. J. Maggie's Death in the Family. Alfred the Great. Amos Kingsley, Kingsley Amos, I should say, the father of Martin Amos, who's still a popular contemporary author, and his college comedic work, Lucky Jim. A compilation of Aristotle, Horace, Longinus, classical criticism, it says. Some ancient Arabic literature, the Conference of the Birds, early Christian writing, St. Augustine's Confessions, Jane Austen's Persuasion, Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron. This one always had a interesting place in my mind and heart, just because of the premise. Several young people in their teens and 20s, mixed group men and women, flee the plague-ridden city to their country estates to kind of wait out the plague and quarantine themselves. And to entertain themselves, they tell each other some very off-color stories. And in fact, shockingly so, even for modern standards. The next, Borowski, This Way for the Gas, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, a sample of Holocaust literature rising out of the Second World War, I should say. After that, as you can see, we go into just some more general classics, trade paperback size, and these books are on the very top of my Penguin shelf, and eventually these books over here will get displaced and they'll be Penguins too. Coming down to the next shelf, we have Vera Brittain's Testament of Youth, Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. I haven't heard good things about the film that's out now, but in any event, it's been adapted several times. Let's see, Charles Brodkin Brown's Edgar Huntley, I believe early colonial literature. Bernie's Evelina, don't know much about it. Oh, this next one, Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. This was a birthday gift from my friends at the bookstore and in my gaming group for my birthday, I guess, just a year and a half ago. Anyway, read it completely through, and it's, of course, one of the more modern Penguins. Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Have not read it since college, but enjoyed it when I did. I won't attempt this author's name, but Letters from an American Farmer and Sketches of 18th Century America. Quentin Crisp's The Naked Civil Servant. I used this one as the subject of a short. You may recall, in fact, it still has a few. It was covered with used book stickers. Why, I don't know. I figured one would have got the point. The next book is a book by Wilkie Collins, The Law and the Lady. Haven't read this one. I did read his book, The Lady in White. Pretty interesting 19th century mystery writer. The next two are a couple of Charles Darwin books, Voyage of the Beagle and The Origin of Species. I have another copy of The Origin of Species. This is the first edition of the book, and the other is a modern library edition of the last version of the book. And before I go any farther, I just want to let you know, my Penguin Classics collection are the most significant manifestation I currently have of being a book dragon. The only duplications I allow myself in my collection are Penguins. I try not to duplicate, otherwise I just pick an edition and go. Next we have John De Forest's Miss Ravenous's Conversion from Secession to Loyalty, a post-Civil War American novel. Then we get into a trio of Dickens, Dombey and Son, Nicholas Nickleby, and the Pickwick Papers. And you'll notice the sheen on this one. It's encased in protective plastic, which is a sign that I probably got it at the Tazewell County Public Library at one of their sales. Next are a couple of Dostoevsky's, Crime and Punishment, and Poor Folk and Other Stories. And of course, long-term viewers will know that Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment is one of two books that I have been less than truthful in representing that I have read them. But I do intend to try it again sometime. My first attempt at it, I was only 22 years old, and I just wasn't ready for it. Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo. I've read that one, and that one was pretty awesome. Let's see. Yeah, George Eliot, I assumed. George Eliot, Daniel Deronda. That's one of my more recent Penguin acquisitions. I've gotten that, I know, in the last couple months. Erasmus's Praise of Folly, a very interesting work of philosophy. And then down to the next shelf, we get into, start off with a Greek playwright, Euripides' The Bacchae and Other Plays, Flaubert's Salammbô, Fielding's Joseph Andrews and Shamala, the Lays of Marie de France, I should say, and except for Euripides, haven't read any of those next three. Chances are probably won't, but they're penguins, so they are keepers. Like I say, this is a manifestation of my book dragonishness, if that's a word. The next one is Elizabeth Gaskell's Cranford. This has been very special. As you can see, it's marked. I've tried to start it. The night I went into the hospital, a friend of mine from the book club / gaming group gave me this in the emergency room. Tried to read some of it in the hospital, but it's a little dry. But still, I appreciated parts of it, and like I say, when I get my reading legs back, I intend to go ahead and finish. John Gay's The Beggar Opera. Good one's Caleb Williams. Here's my first cheat book, you might say. Obviously, William Golding's Lord of the Flies, but it's a Penguin edition. And, there's a lot of black in that spine. And I featured this book in a video of my favorite book covers. I just think that is so evocative. But anyway, that is the first of two penguins that aren't really penguins on the shelf. But until Penguin Classics sees fit to make a real Penguin Classic, I think I'm going to keep it there. Gregory of Tours, History of the Franks, Thomas Hardy's The Mayor of Casterbridge, Bret Harte's The Luck of Roaring Camp and Other Writings, Hasek, The Good Soldier's Sajik, Nathaniel Hawthorne, The Scarlet Letter. Actually read that one. Herodotus, The Histories. This is one I have 2 copies of. I've got a hardcover of Herodotus' The Histories, but because I've got a nice penguin, I'm keeping the penguin too. Okay, Hesiod and Theogenes, I guess. Once again, not really interested, but it's a penguin, so I keep it. Horace, Latin literature, the complete odes and epodes of Horace. Ibsen's Ghosts and Other Plays. Heinrich Ibsen, I've read a little bit of. A fairly interesting writer. Shirley Jackson, The Haunting of Hill House. Really read this one, and of course it's one of the more modern Penguin classics. Always enjoy Shirley Jackson. Rona Jaffe, and I have another Rona Jaffe book. Her contribution to the Satanic Panic of the 80s, Mazes and Monsters, adapted it as a very mediocre movie starring Tom Hanks. But in any event, I don't really get why this is a Penguin classic, but since it is, I keep it and it goes on the shelf. William Dean Howells, The Rise of Silas Lapham. As I recall, I read excerpts of that in college for literature. Then I've got a couple of Henry James's, The American and Washington Square. Then next is Samuel Johnson on Shakespeare. And I'm not real sure, I hadn't really thought about this as not being a real Penguin classic, but it certainly has the look. But I'm going to keep it here for now. I guess that may count as a third that really, for a purist, shouldn't be here, but I say close enough. It looks like a Penguin classic anyway. Joinville and... I don't know the rest. Anyway, The Chronicles of the Crusades. I actually read a little bit of that. I enjoy reading about the Crusades, so... James Joyce, Dubliners. Maybe the only James Joyce book I might ever actually try and read. I'm told that it actually contains a story as opposed to some of his later stuff. Julian of Norwich, Revelations of Divine Love. Let's see. I don't know much about this one, but I don't want to even say the author's name. But The Loom of Time. Kierkegaard, The Sickness Unto Death. Good Christian philosophy. And next, one of Livy's volumes, History of Rome and Italy. And that ends that shelf. And as we start on the 4th shelf, another Livy volume, Rome and the Mediterranean. And then Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, some of his selected poems. Thomas Mann, Death in Venice and Other Tales. I've read some of those stories, had a different edition, but when I got my Penguin, I gave the other one away. Mayhew, London Labor and the London Poor, social criticism from the mid-19th century. Thomas Middleton, 5 plays. Until I got my Penguin, I'd never even heard of Thomas Middleton. But once again, this is where I kind of, I get a little weird. I have to admit, there's something about these little black books that are, I don't know, really appeals to me. Herman Melville's Billy Budd and Other Stories, which I've sampled. And then we get into a couple of Arthur Miller's. Of course, we have The Crucible, which is a real Penguin classic, and then Death of a Salesman, which is one of my cheat books. I think we've seen all the cheat books now. It's a, centenary edition of Death of a Salesman, but like I say, it looks so much like a Penguin classic that I let it hide with the others. Okay, Montaigne's Essays, Ovid's The Erotic Poems. Would really like to get a copy of Metamorphoses by Ovid, but haven't found it yet. 3 Platos in a row, as you can see. My portable Edgar Allan Poe. I've had a few collections of Edgar Allan Poe books and collections. This one replaced a modern library that I had. I decided to keep the Penguin and donate the other. This one I read many years ago, Gargantua and Pantagruel. The one thing that really stood out to me about this book is there's a chapter, believe it or not, as weird as it sounds, there's a chapter early in the book that discusses the merits of different materials to clean oneself after going to the restroom. Believe it or not. John Reed, 10 Days That Shook the World. Leopold von Sacher Moscott. As I recall, this is where we get the word sadomasochist from his last name. Let's see. Sappho, Strung with Love, Poems and Fragments, erotic literature. Seneca, Latin writer, Letters from a Stoic. And here's another instance of where I've got some duplication. I have a complete collection of the entire works of Shakespeare. And I got rid of all my individual copies of Shakespeare plays and poetry and whatnot, except for these 2 Penguins. And I'm keeping them as duplicates because they're Penguins. Next, we've got Sophocles' The Theban Plays, which I read all of in college, I'm fairly certain. Wallace Stegner's Angle of Repose and The Big Rock Candy Mountain. And once again, this one is in the indestructible plastic, indicating I probably got this at a Tazewell County sale. Stendhal's Lucy and Lewin. Oh, and then a trio of John Steinbeck's. And once again, indications I probably got these at Tazewell. Tortilla Flat, Sweet Thursday, and Travels with Charlie in Search of America. I think I've covered this in another video. But yeah, it's a story about travel and a dog. I love that cover. And that finishes that shelf. Continuing on with my John Steinbeck's. We have The Wayward Bus and The Winter of Our Discontent. Oh, and next we have Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Particularly like this cover because, as I recall, it has almost a holographic image. You get the conversion from, let's see if I can get it to do this right. You almost see the change from Jekyll to Hyde, and vice versa. This, of course, is also a duplication. Let me get that back there. Hang on one sec. Okay, getting back to it. I have an omnibus of Robert Louis Stevenson, and it contains Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And once again, it's one of those examples where I will let Penguins duplicate other things in my collection. Like I say, in a lot of ways, I've downsized. I've really started to trim the collection, but Penguins is one where most of the rules are out the window. Then we have a couple of books by Tacitus. And here's another duplicate, Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War. I've got a hardcover of that one up on another shelf. Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, or oftentimes Anna Karenina. And I'm not sure, but it may even be duplicated on this shelf. When we get to the Penguin Deluxe Classics, I know at one time I had one. I may have donated the Penguin Deluxe, but we will see. All right. Anyway, another Tolstoy, Master and Man and Other Stories. We got some Twain, Pudd'nhead Wilson, and A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. I think I finally broke down and gave away my other copy of A Connecticut Yankee, but so that's the only one I've got now. William Tyndale's The Obedience of a Christian Man. And then Sigrid Undset. I got a couple of her books in her series. Looks like I have volumes 1 and 3. Walt Whitman, The Complete Poems. I think this is the last Penguin that I got. I got this at a Princeton Public Library bundle sale. And it replaced actually a couple of other Walt Whitman volumes I have, because this has everything in it, including Leaves of Grass. Okay, next, Oscar Wilde, The Picture of Dorian Gray. And, of course, have read this one. And this will be the edition I keep. And next we have a couple of more early Greek stuff. Xenophon's A History of My Times and The Persian Expedition. The Persian Expedition details his storied retreat from Persia back to home in Greece. And then you'll see we have a shift in size. Penguins have all been like more of a trade paperback size for a long, long time now. But in older times, they were mass market size. And like my other collections up top, we're starting off with anonymous works, compilations, unknown writers, etc. And so we have the Metaphysical Poets, Njal's Saga, another Viking saga, Quest of the Holy Grail, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I'm looking for Tolkien's translation, and I will still keep this one, but I'm looking for that one as well. As you can tell, these are older Penguins. This was like the second cover design they had. I have one of the original, but these are amongst the oldest ones you'll find. Let's see. Some plays by Aristophanes. More plays by Aristophanes. Lysistrata was a real hoot. Aristotle's collection, The Politics. Chaucer, Canterbury Tales, and also Troilus and Cressida. But I think this is my only current copy of the Canterbury Tales. Let's see, and then we get into Chekhov, Anton Chekhov, collections of his plays. And with that, I'm going to have to do a little maneuvering. So what I've done is I've taken the books off of the next lower shelf and temporarily double stack them up here on a higher shelf so I can film them better. Since I've been sick, I have issues stooping that low. I'm doing better, but this will work out better for me. And we start with Cicero's selected works, and this is the oldest penguin that I have. This is what the original Penguin Classics looked like, before the black spines. As you can see, Cicero, the Penguin Classics, as opposed to just Penguin Classics, or Penguin Classic. And of course translated by the eminent classicist Michael Grant. Anyway, that's a really nice one. Really treasure that one. Okay, then on to Daniel Defoe's Moll Flanders, Disraeli's Sybil, W.E.B. Du Bois' Souls of the Black Folk. I think think Goldsmith. I think that's that. William Goldsmith? Oliver Goldsmith, the Vicar of Wakefield. If I'm not mistaken, he did a play called She Stoops to Conquer. Could be wrong. Let me know if I am wrong. But I got to see that live once, and I thought that was really fun play. Next, I paid way too much for this one. It's a copy of Hobbes's Leviathan, one of the seminal works in political science. You know, he let us know that in a state of nature, man's life is, brutal and short. And let's talk about price for a second. I started, I guess my penguin collection really started to snowball a few years ago. I only had a handful of them, but I went to a library sale locally. And after the sale, walked out into the parking lot and noticed that there were boxes and boxes and trash bags full of books out on the side of the parking lot. And it turned out they were throwing them all away. Well, I went in and asked if I could have them since they were throwing them away, and they said sure. So I added like 30 or 40 penguins to the collection that day. Free. Most of these that I've shown you so far, I got for very little. This one is the exception. Believe it or not, even in the condition this thing is in, this is one of the more expensive penguins I've got. Like I say, in kind of rough shape. But, let me see if I can get that back. But no, I probably paid, I think, it's either $5 or $6 for that thing. But I needed a copy of Leviathan, and this one's a penguin. Oh, and then, a word about upgrades. Periodically, I will find a new penguin, and especially with the ones of this style. This was like the third or fourth iteration of the Penguin Classic. And they're color-coded based on, what region of literature they're from. And for those middle books, if I get newer ones, I tend to upgrade. I've done it many, many times. Anyway, and we're back to Ibsen, the Master Builder and other plays. Oh, and I skipped over Homer's The Iliad. And I know I've got at least one other copy of the Iliad someplace else. Juvenal's The 16 Satires. Marlowe, The Complete Plays. The Tragedy of Dr. Faustus, still one of my favorites. Molière, the Miser, and other plays. Read a lot of Molière in college. Really enjoy Molière. Geoffrey of Monmouth, The History of the Kings of Britain. Let's see. Pascal. Would like to have some more Pascal. He came up with the whole wager thing. Anyway, Plato's Republic. And I think currently this is my only copy of Plato's Republic. Then Last Days of Socrates. And then Richardson's novel Pamela. Smollett's Humphrey Clinker. Some more Sophocles, the Theban plays. In fact, didn't we just see the Theban plays a couple of shelves up? Well, even I am reluctant to keep 2 Penguin copies. I'll have to pull those and compare. If they have the same material, I will probably donate one of those. Suetonius, The 12 Caesars. Thackeray's Vanity Fair. I actually read that one. Turgenev, Fathers and Sons. That one has a special place in my heart. I came home on Thanksgiving break from grad school, and my brother, who was taking literature at the time, was assigned this book, and he was going to have to, take an exam on it. So he asked me if I would read it for him and brief him on it, and I did. And he got a B on the exam and was thrilled, and so was I. Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery, his memoir, which is a really good work. Zola's Germinal, know very little about it. And like I say, not likely to read it, but it's a Penguin, so unless I get an upgrade, this is one I'm going to keep. Now the next we go into, these are, I think, my only two Penguin Modern Classics. And that imprint of Penguin Classics ran for a little while. As you can see, I've got a Henry James short story collection, and I got Joseph Conrad's The Secret Agent. But eventually, those were upgraded into these 20th Century Classics. And of course, this is the famous work, Hannah Arendt, Eichmann in Jerusalem, where she reports on his war crimes trial, and coins the phrase banality of evil, because Eichmann, there's Eichmann, he didn't look like evil incarnate. He looked like an accountant, you know, like I said. So it's just like he's just a cog in the machine. Evil doesn't have to look evil, basically. Henry Green, a loving, living, party going. Done nothing about it, but I'll keep it forever because this is one of those 20th century penguins. And I've got a few more of those, which I'll show you in 1 second. And we are coming towards the end. This is the last shelf of the Penguin collection, and I'm continuing in my Penguin 20th Century Classics. We've got Graham Greene, The Power and the Glory. Let's see. Next, Hermann Hesse, Siddhartha. I actually read this one. I went on a phase in college where I was reading tons and tons of Hermann Hesse. I read Steppenwolf, Journey to the East, If the War Goes On, several others. And in other editions, I've got a lot more of his work, and I tend to read more of it as I get opportunity. D.H. Lawrence's Sons and Lovers, and M. Somerset Maugham's The Razor's Edge. I actually featured this one in a short. Actually, probably a haul video and a short. Someone asked me if the famous epigram was in there, and it was in this edition. Riders of the Purple Sage. My grandfather, my dad's father, he would have had this one in his collection. He loved Zane Grey. Next, Thomas Pynchon, the Gravity's Rainbow. Has a different colored cover too. Was kind of surprised to find this in a Penguin Classic, particularly if you know the subject matter. A Gore Vidal, Myra Breckinridge, and Myron. I've got his biography of Lincoln on another shelf. And next we come into a different kind of Penguin Classic. The Penguin Nature Classics. Blue Meridian by Peter Matthiessen. And then next we've got another Peter Matthiessen. The Tree Where Man Was Born. Gavin Maxwell, Rings of Bright Water. And an edited version of the Journals of Lewis and Clark, which I'm pretty sure I have a different edition of on another shelf. These I haven't seen too many of. These are classic military history. This one's about Wellington. The Foil of Napoleon. The Iron Duke. I had another one by an author, I believe it's Carlos D'Estes, about it was on a World War II subject, and something has happened to it. It's been lost in one of my many moves, I'm sure. And next we have the Great Books, where they did they selected like a great work for every year for like 100 years, and the 1902 book was The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Love that cover. And then Portrait of a Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, again by James Joyce. I do like the looks of these editions. Let's see, and Saul Bellows, Let's see, his year was 1953? Yes, 1953. And J.M. Coetzee, Waiting for the Barbarians. The art on these is just wonderful. Only rivaled by the section we're going to get into next. And that are the Penguin Deluxe. And this one I featured in a video, Master and Margarita by Berkhoff. Love that cover. And of course, all the Penguin Deluxes have deckled edges. And it's hard to do one-handed. And French flaps. They're really durable, and they always have really interesting cover designs. And after Master and Margarita, we have Dickens, Tale of Two Cities, with kind of a Valentine's kind of cover on it, I always thought. And of course, longtime viewers and friends will know, this is the second book on this shelf that I have been less than truthful about reading. Was assigned to read this in the 9th grade, and I tell the story often when I'm talking about my feelings about Charles Dickens. I read, the first 5 or 6 chapters. I picked out 3 or 4 random chapters scattered through the middle of the book. I read the last 2 or 3 chapters and gave a book report on it, got a B, and thought, oh my goodness, I didn't even read a fourth of the book, and convinced my teacher that I'd actually read the whole thing. And that's the way I feel about a lot of Dickens. Dickens books, they usually have a good story in it. You just got to dig it out of the other 2/3 of fluff. And I don't want to get into too much of a rant, but it has one of the most aggravating openings of any book I've ever read. I know it sounds very poetic, the best of times, the worst of times, but the man goes on for a page saying absolutely nothing. He says it in very beautiful language, but he says absolutely nothing. Please get to the point. Anyway, that's just me on Dickens. Like I say, he's got beautiful writing. His shorter fiction is better because it's a little more controlled. And I know one author quipped, there were a couple of 19th century authors who got paid by the word. One of them really liked it, and one of them didn't, and it shows. And his theory was that Alexander Dumas really enjoyed getting paid by the word, and Dickens kind of resented it. Anyway, enough of that. Next I got Graham Greene, The End of the Affair. John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. Like I say, really good art on these. They're higher. Penguin's higher end books. I really like the art. The art's, I think, sometimes kind of basic on their main classics line, but I think they really shine in the deluxes, the great books of the century, and sometimes they have really interesting art on just the basic books, but this is where I think they really shine. And here's my copy of the Aeneid by Virgil. That's a pretty interesting cover. And finally, my last Penguin classic, and if you were counting, this would be 182, The Domesday Book, a complete translation. And I remember I got this at a Princeton Public Library sale. Since it is indeed paperback, a monstrous paperback, I only had to pay 50 cents for it. What a brick. You could hurt somebody with that. But the friend of the library volunteer who was running the sale that day asked me what it was about, and I said, well, basically it's a census from medieval England. And she goes, really? I showed her a passage, yeah. It's like page after page of who owns what land and what went with it. It's you know, I guess if you're studying the period, it's an interesting primary resource. But as far as just any kind of just casual reading, no, not hardly. Well, anyway, I'm going to put that one up here till I can rearrange. Anyway, that is the end of the Penguin Classics collection. Don't know if anybody is interested in it as I am, but no, I've managed to accumulate quite a few of these over the years, and by and large have paid very little for them. A couple of these I picked up in college. Most of them from library sales, thrift stores, and anything that says Penguin on it, I'm gonna grab. Even stuff that I don't intend to read, or in some cases books that I don't even like. Like I say, this is my one really hypocritical section of the library. Just about anything else in this room, I'd be more than willing to give up, but you're probably gonna have to fight me to get rid of one of these penguins, unless I'm upgrading. But in any event, like I say, I hope somebody gets some benefit out of this little penguin shelf tour. And if anybody's still hanging around here at the end, God bless you. You have a lot of patience. Anyway, glad to be back. Hopefully we'll get to post a little more often. My health is much improved, so don't have any more excuses. And I guess I will see you guys next time. And as I always say, be safe and have good book hunting.